I'm a chef who survived the first 12 hours of the alien invasion, and this is my story. Before I begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. It was 2:43 a.m. when it happened. I was elbow deep in sourdough, the quiet of my restaurant kitchen a welcome change from the dinner rush that had ended just hours before. The radio played softly, some late-night jazz station that kept me company while I prepped for the morning. That's when the first emergency alert cut through Miles Davis's trumpet, the harsh tone making my hands freeze mid-need. My name is Gabriel Reyes, executive chef and owner of Lumiere, a farm-to-table restaurant in Seattle that had finally earned its first Michelin star last month after years of 18-hour days and sacrifice. I'd stayed late to experiment with a new bread recipe, something I did whenever insomnia got the better of me. The restaurant was empty except for me, the rest of my staff long gone to their beds. "This is an emergency broadcast," said the automated voice, emotionless and mechanical. "Unknown aerial phenomena have been detected over major cities nationwide. Citizens are advised to remain indoors and away from windows." This is not a drill. I wiped flour from my hands and turned up the volume, waiting for more information, but the broadcast simply repeated, "Aerial phenomena?" My first thought was military exercises gone wrong, or maybe some atmospheric event the scientists would explain away tomorrow. Either way, I had bread to finish. The power flickered 3 times before going out completely, plunging the kitchen into darkness, save for the emergency lights. I cursed under my breath. The dough would have to wait. Moving to the window, I cautiously peeled back the blind, despite the warning. The Seattle skyline was different. Where the Space Needle should have been piercing the night sky, something else loomed. A massive shape, angular and alien, hovering silently above downtown. It wasn't alone. Smaller crafts, dozens of them, circled beneath like remeras attending a shark. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Elisa, my sous chef. Her message was a single line that made my stomach drop. "They're here. Turn on your TV if you still have power." I didn't, but I had something better, the rooftop garden. The restaurant occupied the first 2 floors of a 6-story building, with roof access for our urban garden where we grew microgreens and herbs. If I wanted a clear view of whatever was happening, that would be the place. Grabbing my chef's knife more out of habit than any thought of self-defense, I made my way up the service stairs. Each floor I passed was dark and silent. By the time I reached the roof access door, a strange humming filled the air, vibrating through the metal railing under my hand. The night air hit me first, unusually cold for May, carrying a metallic scent I'd never encountered before. Then I saw them clearly. The ships, because that's what they undeniably were, hovered at different altitudes across the city. The largest one, positioned over downtown, was easily the size of CenturyLink Field. Its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating a void in the night sky outlined only by the city lights it obscured. From the smaller crafts, something was descending. Not ships, but beings. They moved through the air with a fluid grace that defied physics, their forms elongated and vaguely humanoid. Where they touched down on buildings or streets, flashes of pale blue light erupted. My phone buzzed again, multiple notifications now. The restaurant group chat was exploding with messages for my staff. "Elisa, streets are chaos. Everyone's trying to leave the city." Marcus, line cook, military vehicles headed downtown. "They're setting up blockades." Zoe, pastry chef, just saw one of those things up close. Not human. Definitely not human. I was about to respond when the rooftop door burst open behind me. Adrenaline surged as I spun around, knife raised instinctively, only to find Marcus standing there, his dark skin ashen with fear, chest heaving from running up 6 flights of stairs. "Chef," he gasped, "we need to go. Now." "Marcus? What are you doing here? I thought you went home hours ago." He shook his head, still catching his breath. "Bus broke down 3 blocks away. Came back to crash in the break room." He pointed toward downtown. "They're taking people, chef. I saw it. These light beams come down and people just go up into the ships. Not fighting or anything. Like they're in a trance." As if to confirm his words, A column of pale blue light shot down from one of the nearest crafts, illuminating a street about half a mile away. Even from this distance, I could see small figures rising up through the beam. "Jesus," I whispered. My mind raced through options. Running seemed pointless if these things could fly. Hiding, maybe? But where? For how long? The restaurant. It suddenly occurred to me that Lumiere might be the safest place right now. Built in an old bank building, parts of it were essentially a concrete bunker, including our wine cellar and walk-in freezers. Plus, we had food, water, and I realized with grim practicality, weapons in the form of every knife, cleaver, and cooking implement imaginable. We're going back down, I decided. The restaurant might be our best shot. We've got supplies, and the basement level is practically a vault. Marcus nodded, clearly relieved to have someone else making decisions. As we turned to leave, a deafening sound cut through the night, a noise so low and powerful it seemed to vibrate the very air in our lungs. The larger ship was emitting some kind of signal, and in response, the smaller crafts began to move with new purpose, spreading out across the city in a coordinated pattern. "That can't be good," Marcus muttered. We hurried back inside, locking the roof access behind us. As we descended the stairs, my mind was already cataloging our resources, the chef in me automatically inventorying and planning as if preparing for a busy service rather than an alien invasion. The restaurant had capacity for 80 guests, plus my staff of 14 when fully operational. The walk-in pantry was fully stocked from yesterday's delivery, enough food to feed perhaps 100 people for several days if rationed properly. Two 500-gallon water tanks supplied our filtered water system, installed last year when Seattle had that E. coli scare. The wine cellar contained not only valuable bottles, but also a reinforced door originally designed to protect the bank's most important documents. By the time we reached the kitchen, I had the beginnings of a plan. "Marcus, help me secure the building. Every door, every window." I moved to the circuit breaker, resetting it even though I doubted the power outage was something so easily fixed. To my surprise, the lights flickered back on. "Power's back," Marcus observed unnecessarily. "That's good, right?" Before I could answer, my phone rang, Elisa again. "Gabriel." Her voice was tight with controlled panic. "Where are you?" "At the restaurant. With Marcus." "Where are you?" "About 10 blocks away with Zoe and Diego. We were at the whiskey bar when everything went crazy. The streets are jammed with cars. People are abandoning their vehicles and running. Those things are everywhere now. Can you make it here safely?" I asked, already knowing I was potentially putting them in danger by asking them to move through the chaos rather than stay put. "I think so. We've been moving through alleys, staying out of the main streets. The things seem focused on areas with the most people. Be careful. Use the loading dock entrance when you get here. We'll watch for you." After I hung up, Marcus and I worked methodically to secure Lumiere. The restaurant had large windows facing the street, our pride and joy during normal times, now a glaring vulnerability. We pulled the heavy metal security shutters closed, an expensive addition after a break-in last year that I was now immensely grateful for. The back entrance and loading dock were reinforced with kitchen equipment, heavy steel prep tables, shelving units, anything that could add an extra layer between us and whatever was outside. We worked silently, efficiently, the training of a professional kitchen translating surprisingly well to crisis management. "Chef," Marcus said suddenly, pausing in his work, "what about everyone else? Our families?" His voice cracked slightly. It was a question I'd been avoiding in my own mind. My parents lived in Arizona, my sister in Boston. My ex-wife and our daughter lived just outside the city. Were they safe? Was anywhere safe now? "Try calling them," I said, my voice gentler than usual. Reception might still be working. While Marcus stepped away to make his calls, I checked the security camera feed that monitored our loading dock. The small screen showed an empty alley, eerily normal except for the unusual quality of light, that same pale blue glow reflecting off surfaces, casting unnatural shadows. A movement caught my eye, 3 figures running toward our dock. I recognized Elisa's tall frame immediately, with Zoe and Diego close behind. They were only a block away, now moving fast. But they weren't alone. From the corner of the frame, something else entered view. Its movement was wrong, not running or walking but gliding, as if friction was merely a suggestion it could choose to ignore. Its proportions were humanoid but stretched, limbs too long and thin, its head oddly shaped. It moved with terrible purpose toward my staff. I slammed my hand on the loading dock door, release, the metal rattling as it raised. "Here," I shouted. "Run." The three of them sprinted the final distance, terror giving them speed. The thing pursuing them accelerated too, covering ground with impossible quickness. Elisa reached the dock first, practically diving inside. Zoe followed, then Diego, who stumbled on the step up. The alien, because there was no other word for it, was barely 10 feet behind him now. I grabbed Diego's arm, hauling him inside with every ounce of strength I possessed as Marcus hit the door control. The metal door began its descent, tortuously slow. The creature reached the dock just as the door was half closed. A limb, not quite an arm, more like a tentacle with too many joints, snaked under the gap. Diego screamed, scrambling backward across the floor. I looked around frantically, grabbed a nearby meat tenderizer, and brought it down with all my strength on the alien appendage. There was a sound like cracking glass, and the limb withdrew. The loading dock door sealed with a definitive thunk. For a moment, we all just stood there, panting, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Then training took over, not military training, but the deeply ingrained habits of a professional kitchen. "Is anyone hurt?" I asked, scanning each of them for injuries. They shook their heads, still catching their breath. "What the hell was that thing?" Diego asked, his voice shaking. "You know exactly what it was," Zoe replied, her usual cheerfulness replaced by grim certainty. "Those aren't humans. Not even close." Elisa, ever practical, was already examining our barricades. "Will this hold?" she asked me. "I have no idea," I admitted, "but it's better than nothing." My phone buzzed again, more messages from staff, some checking in, others desperately asking what to do. We had become an impromptu communication hub for our restaurant family. I made quick decisions. "Tell anyone who can safely reach us to come here," I instructed Elisa. "But don't take unnecessary risks. And spread the word. Avoid main streets and large crowds. That's where those things are concentrating." The next hour was a blur of activity. We fortified our position, inventoried supplies, and welcomed 5 more staff members who managed to reach us. By 4:30 a.m., our group had grown to 10 people, all shell-shocked but alive. The news on everyone's phones was fragmented and contradictory. Some reports claimed military engagement with the Crafts had begun. Others insisted the president had ordered no offensive action while attempting communication. Social media was flooded with videos of the pale blue beams lifting people into the ships, thousands of them across every major city. "They're harvesting us," Zoe said quietly as we huddled around a phone watching the footage. "Like crops." "We don't know that," I countered, though I had no alternative explanation to offer. Amir, one of our waiters, who'd arrived with his girlfriend Paige, spoke up. "Has anyone tried the basement level yet? The old vault." The restaurant's wine cellar had indeed once been the bank's vault, with walls of reinforced concrete and a door that could withstand serious force. It was our fallback position if the main floor was breached. "It's secure," I confirmed, "but I'd rather maintain awareness of what's happening outside as long as possible." As if summoned by my words, a strange light began to filter through the tiny gaps in our barricaded windows, the same pale blue we'd seen from the ships, but more intense now, almost blinding in its brightness. "Everyone down," Elisa shouted, and we dropped to the floor instinctively. The light pulsed, growing stronger. Through the security camera feed, we could see it enveloping the entire building, probing like a searchlight. Metal objects throughout the kitchen began to vibrate, knives dancing across cutting boards, pots trembling on their hooks. Marcus, closest to the window, peered through a small gap in the shutters. "They're right outside," he whispered. "One of the smaller ships, hovering above the street." The vibrations intensified. The pressure in the room changed, making my ears pop painfully. Around us, glass items began to crack, wine glasses shattering one by one along the bar, the sound like macabre wind chimes. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light receded. The vibration stopped. Did they leave? Diego asked hesitantly. A thunderous impact against the front door answered his question. Metal screeched as something powerful struck the security shutters. Again. Basement. Now, I ordered, abandoning any pretense of maintaining awareness. Grab water, grab food. Move. We had prepared for this possibility, assigning everyone specific items to carry. I grabbed my knife roll and the emergency medical kit. Others took containers of prepared food, bottled water, flashlights. We moved quickly toward the stairs leading down to the wine cellar as the pounding at our defenses grew more insistent. The cellar was cool and dark, lined with bottles that in another life represented the pinnacle of my professional accomplishments. Now they were just glass and liquid, meaningless compared to our survival. Beyond the wine racks stood the original bank vault door, left in place during renovation as an architectural feature. It had once secured currency and valuables. Now it would secure us. The massive door swung closed with surprising ease, its mechanism still smooth despite decades of disuse. The sound of its sealing shut was both comforting and terrifying, solid protection, but also the finality of being truly cut off. The space inside was perhaps 30 feet square, with no windows and only a small ventilation system. We had electricity thanks to the building's backup generator, which had kicked in when power was restored. Shelves that once held safe deposit boxes now stored extra linens, cleaning supplies, and overflow inventory. We should be safe here, I said, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. That door is solid steel, designed to withstand explosives. But for how long? Paige asked, the question we were all thinking. They have spaceships. They might have ways to cut through steel like it's paper. One problem at a time, I replied, falling back on kitchen management principles. First, let's organize our supplies and establish a clear picture of what we have. The inventory was both encouraging and concerning. We had enough food for several days, especially with careful rationing. Water was more limited, about 3 days' worth at minimum consumption. The ventilation system appeared to be functioning, but it was designed for occasional use, not 10 people breathing continuously. As we sorted supplies, I checked my phone again. Still had signal, though battery was down to 60%. More messages from staff who hadn't made it to us, reporting from various hiding places across the city. The news feeds were becoming more consistent now, painting a grim picture. The ships had appeared simultaneously over every major city worldwide. Initial military responses had been met with devastating force. Aircraft approaching the larger vessels simply disappeared in flashes of light. Ground forces fared no better when they engaged the alien beings directly. Conventional weapons seemed ineffective against both the ships and their occupants. The harvest, there was no other word for it, continued unabated. Millions already taken, lifted into the ships in those pale blue beams. No communication, no demands, no explanation. I put the phone away, not wanting to further frighten the others with this information. But Amir had been reading over my shoulder. "They're taking everyone," he said, his voice hollow. "This isn't an invasion. It's an extinction." The words hung in the air, too terrible to acknowledge, too plausible to deny. I checked my watch. 5:22 a.m. Dawn would be breaking soon, though we'd have no way to see it from our concrete bunker. The thought of sunlight felt suddenly precious, a simple pleasure I'd taken for granted every day of my life. "We should try to rest," I suggested, making an effort to restore some normalcy. "Take shifts watching the door. Everything is more manageable after sleep." No one believed this, least of all me, but they nodded anyway. The rhythm of crisis had always been the same in my kitchen. Moments of intense activity followed by watchful waiting. This was no different, except for the stakes. Sleep came in fits and starts, my body exhausted, but my mind racing. Dreams of blue light and reaching limbs jolted me awake repeatedly. By what my watch said was 9:15 a.m., I gave up trying and relieved Elisa from door watch. Anything? I asked quietly, not wanting to wake the others. She shook her head. Not a sound. It's almost worse than if they were trying to break in. I understood what she meant. The silence left too much room for imagination. Your daughter, Elisa said after a pause. Sophie, right? Have you heard from her? The question pierced me. I'd been avoiding thinking about Sophie directly, focusing instead on immediate survival. My daughter was 10, living with her mother in Bellevue, just across Lake Washington from Seattle. I'd sent texts, tried calling, but received no response. No, I admitted. Nothing yet. Elisa squeezed my shoulder. Kids are resilient. And Bellevue might be safer than the city. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The chef's compartmentalization that had served me well so far threatened to crack under the weight of personal worry. Around 10:30 a.m., the first sign that we hadn't been forgotten came in the form of vibrations through the floor, subtle at first, then stronger. Dust drifted down from the ceiling as something massive moved above us. Everyone was awake now, eyes fixed upward as if they could see through the concrete. They're in the restaurant, Zoe whispered. The vibrations continued, accompanied now by sounds, not pounding or breaking, but something more methodical. Scraping, probing, searching. They're looking for us, Diego said, stating the obvious but giving voice to our shared fear. Hours passed this way, the alien presence above us never retreating but never breaking through either. We ate sparingly, drank minimally, and spoke in hushed tones as if volume might somehow give away our position through feet of reinforced concrete. My phone battery dipped below 40%, and I reluctantly turned it off to conserve what remained. The loss of connection to the outside world was another small death. No more updates, no way to check on Sophie or my parents or anyone else I cared about. Around 1 p.m., the methodical sounds above stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse, leaving us to wonder, had they given up or found what they were looking for? The answer came an hour later. A new vibration, different from before, more concentrated, centered on the vault door. They found us, Marcus said, his voice flat with resignation. I moved toward the door, pressing my hand against the cool metal. It was warm to the touch, not hot, but definitely warmer than it should be in the perpetually cool cellar. They're doing something to the door, I reported, trying to keep my voice steady, possibly trying to cut through. Panic threatened to overtake the group, but years of kitchen discipline unexpectedly came to our rescue. Everyone stay calm, I said, using the same authoritative tone that had quelled countless service meltdowns. Panicking uses oxygen and energy we can't afford to waste. To my surprise, it worked. The kitchen hierarchy, so deeply ingrained in all of us, provided structure when everything else was chaos. They looked to me, the chef, for direction, just as they would during a disastrous dinner service when everything was going wrong. We need to prepare for breach, I continued, forcing myself to think tactically. If they get through, we'll need to fight. Our weapons were pathetically inadequate, kitchen knives against beings that commanded interstellar travel. But having a plan, any plan, was better than helpless waiting. We positioned ourselves strategically around the vault, armed with the best implements we had, my Japanese chef's knife, heavy rolling pins, wine bottles that could be broken into jagged glass weapons. It was absurd, but it was all we had. The warmth on the door increased gradually. Whatever method they were using to cut through, it was slow but persistent. By 2:30 p.m., the center of the door was hot enough that we couldn't touch it. If we survive this, Diego said suddenly, breaking the tense silence, I'm definitely asking Mia to marry me. No more waiting for the right time. It broke the tension momentarily, a reminder of human concerns that seemed both trivial and monumentally important now. When we survive this, I corrected him, I expect an invitation to the wedding. Others joined in, making implausible promises about what they do, when rather than if, small acts of defiance against the probability of our situation. My thoughts drifted to my own life, the years spent building my career at the expense of my marriage, the custody arrangement that limited my time with Sophie to weekends and Wednesdays. All the missed moments sacrificed for professional achievement that now seemed hollow. If I survived, When I survived, I would do better. The center of the vault door began to glow red around 3 p.m., the metal finally succumbing to whatever extraordinary technology was being applied from the other side. We tensed, gripping our makeshift weapons, preparing for the worst. Then something unexpected happened. The glow faded. The heat dissipated. The vibration stopped. We waited, barely breathing, for some new method of attack. Minutes passed in tense silence. Did they give up? Zoe whispered eventually. No one answered because no one knew. We maintained our positions, waiting for the assault to resume, but nothing happened. By 3:30 p.m., I made a decision. I'm going to check my phone, see if there's any news. Just for a minute to conserve battery. I powered it on, waiting anxiously for signal. To my surprise, multiple messages appeared immediately, including an emergency broadcast alert. Attention all citizens. At 1,500 hours Eastern, unidentified vessels began rapid departure from Earth atmosphere. Military confirms withdrawal is occurring globally. Remain sheltered until all clear is issued. This is not a drill. The timestamp showed it had been sent just 30 minutes ago. They're leaving, I announced, my voice unsteady with disbelief. The ships are withdrawing. The response was not immediate celebration, but cautious confusion. After hours of certain doom, the prospect of survival seemed almost more unbelievable than extinction. Why? Elisa asked the question we were all thinking. Why come all this way, start taking people, then just leave? No one had an answer. The emergency alert provided no explanation, only confirmation of retreat. But there was something else on my phone, a text from my ex-wife sent 15 minutes ago. We're okay. They never came to Bellevue. Is your restaurant safe? Sophie is worried about you. The relief hit me like a physical force, my legs nearly buckling under the weight of it. Sophie was safe. Whatever else happened, my daughter was alive. I showed the text to the others, proof that the outside world still existed, that not everyone had been taken. More phones came on, more messages exchanged, a growing network of confirmation that the impossible had happened. The aliens had withdrawn. It took another hour before we dared open the vault door, our caution overriding the desperate desire to see daylight again. When we finally emerged into the wine cellar, nothing seemed changed. We proceeded carefully up to the restaurant level, weapons still in hand. The dining room was destroyed. Tables overturned, windows shattered despite the security shutters, kitchen equipment strewn about, as if a tornado had passed through. But no aliens. Through the broken windows, we could see the orange light of late afternoon bathing the city. The ships were gone from the sky, leaving only contrails from military aircraft now patrolling the airspace. The street outside was littered with abandoned cars and debris, but strangely empty of people, either fled or taken. In the distance, sirens wailed, the familiar sound of human emergency response reasserting itself. We stood in the ruined remains of my restaurant, the achievement of my professional life reduced to splinters and broken glass. Yet we were alive when so many others were not. What now, chef? Marcus asked, the question directed at me out of habit rather than any real expectation that I would have answers. I looked around at my staff, my team, who had survived the unimaginable together. Now we do what humans always do. We clean up. We rebuild. We go on. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was a start. We began the process of restoring order to our small corner of the world, sorting through the wreckage of Lumiere to salvage what could be saved. As we worked, emergency broadcasts continued to update the situation. The aliens had departed as suddenly as they had arrived, taking millions of people with them. No communication, no explanation, no apparent pattern to who was taken and who was spared. Cities worldwide reported similar experiences, devastation, abduction, then abrupt abandonment. Theories already proliferated, resource collection, scientific sampling, even failed colonization. But they were just guesses, human minds trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. By sunset, we had cleared enough space to sit together in what remained of the dining room, sharing the first proper meal since the invasion began, a simple pasta made from salvaged ingredients, cooked on the gas range that still miraculously worked. As we ate, I thought about what made us survive when others didn't. Luck, certainly. Location, maybe our concrete bunker proving too difficult to breach in the limited time they chose to stay. But also adaptation. The same skills that made us function in the high-pressure environment of a professional kitchen had served us in crisis: organization, clear communication, hierarchy when needed, flexibility when required. I am Gabriel Reyes, a chef who survived the first 12 hours of the alien invasion. I don't know why they came or why they left. I don't know if they'll return. But I know that whatever happens next, the skills that define my former life, endurance, adaptation, leadership, will be the same ones I need for whatever new world emerges from this day. And if those ships return, we'll be ready. Not with weapons, but with what makes us human: creativity, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of shared survival.